Hey guys, Dave with Moneyology here. Hope everyone is having a great weekend. This is February 4th, 2018, and this is the blockchain and AI sector review. For those of you who are new to our videos, we take a look at these charts from weekly perspectives, try to get rid of the short-term noise in the markets to get a better understanding of what's taking place in the longer-term trends in the markets. As you know, Bitcoin and various other, all the other ICOs have been getting slaughtered basically over the last couple of weeks, and it's taken down a lot of these blockchain related names. Now some are directly tied to Bitcoin and others are just tied to the blockchain technology, so in theory they shouldn't be affected whatsoever, but clearly they are. So let's have a look at what's going on, see where bottoms might be found, and we'll start with Bitcoin services. This one had a bullish flag here, and clearly that broke down below 15 cents, and it's very possible, unless this can break out above this trend line, likely heads back to 5 cents. So some significant downside potentially ahead just in terms of percentage drop. We closed below the 50 on the RSI, so this does not look good. DPW, another one here that I thought would hold above this 175 level. Well, it closed very weak, closed below the middle Bollinger Band, and unless it can recapture that very quickly and recapture this 50 level on RSI, it doesn't look good, and if that's the case, the next likely target is around $1 a share. So we'll see. Either it recaptures this very quickly this week, or it heads lower towards a buck. Global Arena Holder, GAHC. This one looks very interesting to us. The just technical risk reward feels very good here. I mean, perhaps it consolidates above this trend line for a little bit, but ultimately, if this trend line does hold, then it likely heads higher down the road. I expect this RSI level of around 40, which coincides with the level of RSI when price really took off from just under 0.001 cent. That's really going to be a very, very strong support on momentum. So that might be a little bit lower. It might be towards 1 cent, but ultimately this area is where I'm looking to potentially initiate a position here should I have the funds available. INPX, this one is one that we own. For those of you who have been following our tweets, we own a lot of this one, and for better or worse, it's taken quite a hit the last couple of weeks, but massive volume. Something from our perspective, something substantial is taking place over here. The momentum is being built on RSI here, and every time it hits the 50 to 60 zone, it keeps getting knocked down. So right now, the last couple of weeks have not been good for the stock, but this has been taking place on low volume. So I still believe that this 20 area will be very, very strong support. There's still positive divergence on RSI, and so it just needs to take out this 35 zone on a weekly basis. Likely heads higher towards 6250, followed by 125 and 250. Obviously, it's got a lot of resistance to break through to get to these areas, but I feel like things are turning around for this particular stock. One thing I'll point out that the entire sector was basically down 30% last week, and this particular name was down only 10%. Is that a silver lining? Perhaps, but we'll see if there's some strength that this particular name finds in the weeks ahead. INTV, well, it's hanging on by a thread. If it can maintain this 50 support zone on RSI, then potentially it can start its rally to the upside. It found some very strong support around that 62.50 cent area, and it closed the week much stronger than it was going on in the middle of the week. It's still above zero on the weekly MACDs, so it's got some potential. I want to see what it does here around 125. If it can break above 125, it's a buy. If it doesn't, then I wouldn't touch it until you want to see some consolidation and then curl higher if that should happen. Marathon Patent Group, MARA. This one too, I thought that this particular flag would hold, and in terms of price, it's still holding right now, but momentum is certainly breaking lower, and unless it can recapture that and potentially break from this trend line, it looks like it wants to head lower towards this 40 area, which coincides with this support, or at this point this was resistance when price broke from, I'd say, about a buck all the way to $6. So this is a super strong area of support, but it would take some significant downside in price for it to get there. So we'll see what happens. But with MACDs now below zero, we might have several more weeks of downside in Mara before this might find strength. We'll see what happens here. MGT Capital Investments, well, like INTV, this one had a very strong bounce, so we'll see if there can be some follow-through next week, and with that, a recapture of the 50 RSI zone. That's where it found support last time around, so that's positive, but the downside is there's negative divergence where momentum is at the same pace, even though price is much higher today at 261 than the last time we were at 154. That tells me that it's very possible we probably head back towards that 150 area before potentially finding a double bottom in price action. Next on the list is Net Element International, NETE. This one, it broke below 50 on the weekly RSI, and it's holding this 625 zone, but it doesn't look good, guys. If this 620 zone breaks to the downside, this thing can really fall hard towards the $3 area. So time will tell whether this particular area holds. If you draw a trend line like this is another support zone. So it's very possible that this can bounce and rebound here, and certainly for the longs, I hope it does. But if this breaks, then there's going to be additional downside ahead. So stay tuned and keep close eye on what happens around this particular support zone here. Next on the list is NXTD. NXTD. Also, it's kind of like in this bullish flag formation, but it's below the middle Bollinger Band. Weekly MACDs are basically hovering above zero. RSI close the week slightly below 50. It needs to recapture that as soon as possible. If it doesn't, next likely price target is 125 with RSI support around that 40 area before the next potential bounce will happen. On Track Innovations, OTIV. This one looks very weak, and frankly, it never looked so strong. It was never able to create new highs on RSI. So I even though there was massive volume, I think for the time being, this might want to see break below $1 before moving higher. A couple more names here that we want to cover. Parateam Corp, TEUM. This is one that we were very long, and we still believe in its long-term picture. We think it will get to 5 and 750 one day, and that this year. But look at the volume here on the up days. We've had 4 weeks of down moves, and now we're retesting this breakout trend line. If this cannot hold, then the next logical target is this 120 area. Ultimately, RSI did not hold 61. I wanted to see that hold, and the next likely price area of RSI is 50. There will be strong support, and that likely coincides with this 120 zone. At that point, if given the opportunity, I'll be looking to add and re-enter my position. RSYS Corp, RSYS, another name that has very strong long-term potential, both fundamentally and technically, but it's had a very, very weak couple of weeks here, 4 weeks in a row, and if it needs to hold the 75 zone. The bright side is there is positive divergence here, where momentum here is at 30, whereas when price was at 75 previous times, momentum was much lower. So that's a positive sign, but at the same time, you want to see this bounce very soon. If it breaks below 75, you want to see more positive divergence, still keep shape, and ultimately maybe find some support right below 75, and then ultimately break higher. I think this will see 150, $2, possibly as high as 350 this year, but it might take some time. Remark Holdings, MARK, another one that has had a spectacular rally from a low of 193, high of 1510, but it's breaking down, guys, and it doesn't look like there's going to be much support before it hits that 50 RSI zone. Likely coincides with that $7 mark, so still some significant downside, possibly as low as $5 before some support is found here. And RIOT Blockchain, it closed the week very weak, below the 50 on the weekly RSI, but it's possible it's going to find some support here, because this is the last area where we broke out of. And so if it does find support, we can expect to see a bounce, 10, 20, 30% bounce here. Would not be a surprise. The question is, if it does bounce, what does it do in this area? Does it see some follow through, or does it see continued weakness and potentially create like a head and shoulders, move lower towards the basically 450 area? So we'll see. Don't have any strong opinions here, but it will be interesting to watch what happens. 7 Stars Cloud Group, SSC. This one also, I expect to see now that it's at the 50 RSI point, expect to see some strong support here around the $3 zone. We found it towards the end of the week. If it can hold this area, it can potentially rally all the way to $5 a share. So this is a sell below $3, and this is a buy above $3.50. So we'll be watching this one closely to be sure. Single Point, SING, this is one that we own. This is a bullish flag here, but it doesn't look strong right now. So it's at the lower boundary of this bullish flag. Above 5 cents here, it's still a buy. Below 5 cents, well, it's a technical sell. On a weekly standpoint, the MACDs are basically firmly below 0, which is not a positive sign. But it likely finds support here around that 40 RSI level, which coincides with this area of breakout right over here. So this area likely holds. That probably coincides with the 5 cent mark, and then we'll see what happens thereafter. Social Reality, SRAX, it's got to recapture that 50 RSI mark, and if it does, then we might see a rally here. But otherwise, if this $4 zone breaks, coincides with the 50 EMA of 391, if that breaks, then the next likely support is 3 followed by 2. So a lot of downside potential here in SRAX. U.S. Global Investors, GROW, another one that is hovering for dear life here around 50. There's a lot of support here around 50. So can it hold? We'll see. If it does hold, then you want to see a break above 350 for a rally towards 5. If it doesn't hold, then likely heads lower to test this 250 area of support. Veritone, VERI. This one had a breakdown, pretty substantial breakdown. I'm not sure if that's contingent on some technical or fundamental news, but ultimately the technicals looked good here for a while, but they no longer do. If you own this one, I would strongly consider trimming or dumping this particular position. Finally, RIT Media Group. We like this particular name. It's broke out of this downtrend. It's consolidating in this bullish flag. It looks like the MACDs want to move higher. If this breaks out above this flag pattern, the next price target is this 31 zone, followed by, I think this eventually hits about $1.50 at some point in the next couple of weeks, or rather months. Finally, a couple more names. XSPA, XSPA. This is in a downtrend, and while it broke out a little bit here, it failed to hold, and now it seems like it wants to move lower. Unless this is above 125, this is not a stock that you want to own at this point. And finally, Zunle's Limited, XNET. This one had a very, very nice run, but moved to 27, tried to rally back to 25, had very significant negative divergence here. No surprise, we rolled over. If this cannot hold around the 12 zone, this likely heads back towards 6, possibly as low as 4. I would not want to own this particular name at this junction. Anyway, guys, thank you very much for following us and watching our videos. For those of you who haven't done so already, we only have 5 patrons, yet we have 10,000 plus followers on StockTwits. We could really appreciate use your support. $10, $25, $100 will go a long way towards helping us create this really nice education and trading community for you guys. So it's up to you whether you want this to happen, but if you do, please go to patreon.com/moneyology and pledge your support today. Thank you, and have yourselves a wonderful week. Take care.